Thank you. Yes, there was ways to come up here, but I'm an old Minnesota guy. I got my start in Winona, Minnesota. I'm actually a dairy nutritionist guy from Wisconsin, and I taught Winona Area Technical College for 7 years, taught farm operation and management, which was a 2-year post-high program, and so I'm self-taught in soils. I'm really a dairy nutrition guy. Everybody thinks I'm a soils guy. So I left, I started consulting with Brookside in the late 70s, and I left Minnesota, went back to Wisconsin, and bought a farm because I said I was overeducated and undertrained, and I was trying to figure this thing out called agriculture. And so I got involved with starting a business and got involved in agriculture. Seeing I was an educator, I've written, this is my third book, and this is just came out last year. It's now 500 pages. It takes me that long to say what you're going to hear in 30 minutes. And so anyway, it's the second book called Advancing Biological. They're available from Amazon. It's probably easier to read if you're into science and chemistry, why this one covers in a great deal on that aspect of it. I'm going to try to paint a picture out here, and I tell people that I'm pretty convinced that we've got this thing all figured out. I got to make sure that, I don't know which one's my little dot, it doesn't matter, I guess I can't find it. Is that we really have agriculture all figured out. I've been at this for 40 years. I left the teaching at the tech school trying to figure this whole system out, and it was really complex. Yeah, we don't have all the details there, but we have really developed a farming system that's pretty sane out here, and not whether it be through, I was involved with the Land Stewardship Project and all some of these other little things in whatever direction it went. We got a lot of this aspects of this figured out all the way down from on the soil. So I started a business in the early 80s after I got back in Wisconsin called Midwestern BioAg. And we called it biological farming because we wanted the farmers to focus on soil biology, not just soil chemistry. And so we've now presently, the dark green areas are our big clusters. We got a facility at Utica, Minnesota. We got one in Wisconsin. We just moved into South Dakota, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan. I was in Michigan all week, and Ohio. That's our strength areas, and we work with almost every kind of farm imaginable. We started out with dairy farms. All the other light green areas are areas that we've done business over the last numbers of years. And like I said, we're with about 4,500 farms. And our whole tagline is better farming through better soils. That's what Midwestern BioAg is all about. And I tell people this here comes from Australia. My first book came out in 2000. I've been whipped around this planet about 10 times and got quite actually to see a lot of different things. It's pretty educational. A week ago I spoke at the Nuffield Scholarship Group, which is a wonderful, wonderful organization started by Henry Ford and Mr. Sir Nuffield. And it was about an exchange of ideas in agriculture around the world. Mr. Henry Ford showed Mr. Nuffield, which is the Morris cars, how to make a production line. And Mr. Nuffield took the advice and started putting on agriculture. This here is really interesting because that's virgin land in Australia. And everybody says, oh, you get your magnesium levels in your soil high and your ground will get really hard. And these are Kamilaris that farm this farm, and they're just virginally cleared. I'm pretty convinced that's what your ancestors found when they broke the prairies. It looked like a chocolate cake, and it could sink into it 6 inches deep. And it was just beautiful, biologically active soil. But I want to tell you, I told Kamilaris I'll be showing up every 10 years. I want to see how long it takes them to destroy it. I know how long it took to build it. But now, can you imagine if you were that kind of a soil is what you started with? Now, you got to admit that obviously I know some of the guys down by St. Louis that their grandfathers cleared the prairies and they tilled it about 10 times, plowed it 3 times the first year to try to burn up all that carbon. We can't blame tillage for all the problems we got out here, but there certainly was an issue because they had to get it down to manage it. They're growing soybeans on that land as a cover crop, as a soil building crop, and the cotton is in the growth, but it's a vegetable farm. They're a huge vegetable farm in Sydney, Australia. But isn't that amazing if our soils looked like that? We wouldn't have these erosion problems. The water would soak into the ground, and we'd have this huge resilience built in farming that we don't have today. When I farmed years ago, when we started, when I was teaching, everybody just kind of farmed. And now we got about 17 methods of farming. I use the word biological, like I said, because I want people to focus on biology. The one out of Australia, South Africa, called the theory of constraint, I really like also. They're very, very, very good at this game, and they try to find your limiting factor. They got a whole bunch of consultants that go through everything on that farm, say, what is your limiting factor? Is it a trace mineral? Is it tillage? Is it soil biology? Is it lack of diversity of plants? And so that's the system out here. Regenerative has been around a long time. I like that term, but now it's not really a system of farming because it's been around a long time. But now someone's trying to label as a system of farming, just like organic. NRC NSAS is the soil health study. In my career, I was just absolutely shocked. I thought I was on my own forever. I never thought the government agencies would get into this business called soil health. It's actually a really exciting time in agriculture. And I tell farmers, and they don't always like to hear it, I said to the corn and bean guys, you don't deserve to get paid more, because if you did, it'd be fence row to fence row, corn and beans, and you'd ruin our environment. You have to learn how to farm sanely before we can pay you more. Now, they don't like to hear that, but that's kind of the truth if you think about it. Pour on more chemicals, more nitrogen, the price of corn went to $7. Look what happened. And so, anyway, the soil health guide is really good. Sustainable, I never did like that word, because I always say, what do you want to sustain? A mess? Can't we fix it? No-till is not a system of farming, it's a system of planting. Organic is not a system of farming, it's a system of not doing. I don't do this, I don't do that, I don't do this. My family farm is certified organic. I work with a lot of farms, and we farm about 1,500 acres in southwest Wisconsin. We work 180 cows, and we grow a lot of different kinds of crops. And we've been organic since the mid-90s. I got introduced to that when I was teaching here. And so anyway, there are different systems of farming. This picture actually came from a pasture-raised poultry operation in Australia. But I think this is really true. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. If you want to lobby and law against what's existing, you're never going to change anything. I'm totally convinced, that's Buckminster Fuller, to change something, we need to build a model that makes the one that's we had obsolete. And we have that model. You know what's driving it? The guy's growing 400 bushel corn. When I started this business, we rented a fertilizer facility in northern Illinois, and then we took off. We came back into Wisconsin and left Illinois. Why? That big old rich prairie ground, knife in some anhydrous ammonia and 150 bushel corn, unless you forgot to put seed in the hopper. Well, you see, now we're back. We built a brand new facility at Milledgeville, Illinois, because they're chasing 300 bushel corn. These guys growing 400 or 500 bushel corn. You can't believe the train running across Illinois. So I get a little annoyed, but how are we going to feed all these people? Well, 40% of our corn goes to make ethanol, number one, which might not be energy efficient, but it's what's there. And the other thing is that we can double our yields. So now what? We can do with all the stuff we can produce. And that's the kind of farm that's heading out there. I don't know what we're going to do with that. So I think we have the model that's created. I don't want to just talk about yield, because see, if you can't get more yield by putting on more N, P, and K, or we'd already be there. Our yields came out of equipment and genetics. The farm soils haven't really changed. So now to get the 300-400 bushel corn to double their yields, they're going to have to change their soils. And that means other minerals they haven't been dealing with. University of Illinois, Fred Beadle last year, 379 bushel corn. They never were close to the county average before, but it's trace minerals, it's carbon fertilizers, it's soil health, it's diversity of plants, it's putting on compost. It's all the things that we're kind of missing in our farming system. It's not doing more of what they were doing. So biological farming is really, this is from Ireland actually, it's an approach to food and production that respects the natural process of farm to get top quality products. Like I said, if you fertilize for quality, you can't stop the yield. If you do everything you can to get quality, what's quality? A balance of minerals in a healthy plant that does not need intervention. So biological really deals with a three-tiered thing: the chemical, the nutrient chemistry part of the soil, the physical part, and the biological part of the soil. Everything comes from the soil, everything returns. It's a living, live system with trillions of things living in it. So when I did this whole thing, biological farming, these are the rules I've written for biological farming, and it covers those three aspects. I want to test and balance your soil. I want to look at more than just N, P, and K. I want to look at different sources. I said the dumbest idea man ever came up with is to put nutrients in solution. They sell fertilizer on price and solubility, and then not expect them to get in your water. Now think about that. Wasn't that kind of dumb? Why didn't they, grandfather bought a fertilizer that had more things attached to it, and it was more slow release. It wasn't so soluble. They started selling fertilizer on solubility, and now we're back adding things to take them so they're not so soluble. We add carbon. We add molasses to liquids. We had humates. We had compost. We had digestate fertilizer. So now we changed it back around. Then the other thing, that pesticide, herbicide, and nitrogen are necessary evils. But boy, oh boy, and I had biotechnology on it, and everybody made me take it off. They're necessary evils for some people, but they're all there, just like to say all the chemistry that we take as humans to stay functioning, but they're there because we have a system that's things are not healthy within it. So I need a maximum, I need to minimize my negatives. I need a maximum diversity of plant life and tillage. I have a whole different system on tillage that we looked at. We developed a tillage system out here because I'm not big on no-till. Just not that why would you till if you didn't have to? But no-till, that was brought up this morning by Brian, is you see, this no-till did not stop erosion. I was out at Beltsville, Maryland, speaking at the thing about the Chesapeake Bay Watershed District thing, and I got up and full of universities and saying I made a really bad mistake. First I said, I asked the question, is the Chesapeake Bay getting cleaner? Oh, it's getting worse. And I said, when are you going to recognize that forcing no-till is not going to solve your problem? You could hear a pin drop on the roof, and from then on, I think I lost the crowd. But forced them to go no-till on hillsides like this, and the ground is as hard as the floor you're sitting on. And what happens when you lay all the chemicals and all the manure and all the fertilizers on top of the ground and it rains or the snow melts? What do you think happens? Why wouldn't you be forced to place it in the ground? Why would you put it on top and not till? Unless you got healthy soils, the focus should be none of those things. The focus should be healthy mineralized soils. And then till if you have to, but don't till if you don't have to. And I'm a real believer in some other things I'll show you as I go along. I'm trying to paint that picture, and so then I want to feed my soil life. That's our farm, Otter Creek Organic Farms. We're in southwestern Wisconsin, and we have a dairy farm, and we're in the hills. We're into breeding fancy cattle. My dad was a real fancy. My uncle donated the first bull calf that went and stood at an artificial service thing in the 1940s in the state of Wisconsin. He had the first herd to make 500 pounds of fat way back in the 1940s. Amazing. But anyway, that's a fancy registered Holstein off our farm. She lived to be 17 years old on our farm, and she had produced 90,000 pounds of milk in her lifetime. So I tell people, you just buy one cow, put it in the barn and milk it, and then when your kid gets ready for college 17 years later, you got the money saved up. On the right-hand side, you see is an animal. I'm a dairy nutrition guy. These two systems are almost identical. If you look at the dairy side of it over here, years ago we fed baled hay. A lot of you guys, some of you folks maybe came from farm systems. We fed baled hay, cob corn. We fed different kind, dical, trace mineral salt. Nobody feeds cows that way anymore. We used to make 2 cuttings of hay a year. We make 5 now. And we manage this nutrition in our balance into our cows. We feed TMRs. We mix it all together to get maximum efficiency. We feed chelated, trace minerals, anionic salts, bypass protein, direct fed microbials, and on the list goes. And we doubled our production. Now, you got to be careful. A lot of these guys, you can push a cow over the end. Now, the turnover and the kill rate on cows is pretty high because they burn them out. In our soils, if we go back 40 years, how did we do soils? Cheapest source of NPK and lime to a 6.5 pH. What's different today? Nothing. And that's why we can double our yields. We're going to do the same thing to those soils that we did to the cows 40 years ago. And that's what's happening out here. Land price is expensive. Everything you touch is expensive. You can't get more land. These guys are going after high yields, and they're going to have to do it by getting healthy soil. So it's kind of exciting in that respect. It's not going to be a chemistry farming system. This one of my students did this way back in the 90s out here. We did this. Mike Loveland's down at, he lives at Altura. He's one of our consultants now. But anyway, we compared 16,000 feed samples with our biological farms. I like to look at that calcium. See, calcium is kind of a real key to this farming system I'm talking about. It said, see, the conventional guys had 1.1% calcium in their hay. And you see, we were always taught if your pH is 6.5, you get all the calcium you want. Then how did our guys get up 47% more calcium? And that's why calcium is the trucker of all minerals. And that's why calcium is key to plant health. The more calcium, the more pectins, the more it puts calluses on, the more less insect troubles. It's huge in the health of a plant. And nitrogen gives us a lot of trouble. I did my graduate work on sulfur, and I understand some of those things really well. So we go after those highly mineralized feeds. And that's why I call it calcium, the trucker of all minerals, and boron, the steering wheel. So we can change feed. I don't care what kind of crop. I don't know how many farmers are in or you're involved with, whatever crop they grow. See, and this is, I've taken this formula around the world. It's never failed. I actually dropped all the fungicides on bananas in Australia. On larger 7 or 8 consultants now doing consulting work on bananas, and they were spraying a fungicide every 5 to 7 days, and they haven't done one in 10 years. And it's all about getting enough available calcium and boron. This calcium is the hardest mineral to get in a plant because commercial fertilizers and things wipe it out, and just because you got a high pH doesn't mean you got available calcium. You need boron to get calcium uptake. Phosphorus, everybody attacks. I'm trying to tell you, phosphorus is the good guy, not the bad guy. It's a good guy for farmers to get farm health, you see, but why is everybody attacking it? I said, if you were from another planet and you look down on Earth, and you watched a fire, and every time there was a fire, you would watch it. Eventually, you're going to have to blame the firemen for the fire because they're always there. Phosphorus is exactly the same. It's getting there by erosion, not leaching. What leaches is nitrogen and salts and all these other things. Phosphorus is erosion. So if we stop the erosion, it's a triple negative charge. It attracts really well to the soil. And if we combine it with a carbon source and place it in the ground, it really is essential for plant health. It's the Krebs cycle, adenosine triphosphate. You need phosphorus. You need magnesium. Magnesium is really hard to get into a plant because potassium interferes with it. I don't care if your soils are high in magnesium. You need to add sulfur because it makes Epsom salts. I get all over the plant. I said, people give me tissue tests or plant tests, petioles on potatoes. I look at the tests. I can tell them exactly how they farm by looking at those 4 minerals. If they're really high, I'll guarantee you don't get phosphorus. You can't buy your way into phosphorus. You got to have that's a biological mineral. You don't buy your way into magnesium. You farm your way into magnesium. So those minerals are huge on plant health and production. This is on our farm, and we're real believers in shallow incorporating residues. You see the fence post rots up at the top, and I'll show you a picture in a minute, but see, this is a big Lemken disc, comes out of Germany. We look at all the kind of things. That was actually a green bean crop that the canning factory rejected, and it waited and waited and waited. It's all under irrigation. We grow crops for the canning factory, and then they finally said we could take it down, so we took it down, and that's kind of how we farmed. I say shallow incorporating, but see, I'm a real believer in it. You never hurt soils by running on residues. You hurt soils by tilling bare ground. That's why you damage soils, not when there's a lot of residues on here. And I said, that was right next to the highway. The neighbors were all laughing because there's weeds and everything in it. And I said, I do that just to keep them out of the organic market. We like getting paid what we paid, and we don't like competition. You do anything you want to the top couple inches. And that's why under no-till, the dilemma is this. Just because the thing lays on top of the ground, you can get a huge crust on that ground, and that's when things run over. I'd rather in shallow incorporate those residues. The fence post rots off right there, and that's your biological active zone. That is set, you fix the soil from the top down, and then when the water hits it, you got protection on the ground because you left a lot of residues on top, but you also got a wicking action to get that water to soak in. And so I don't have to you got to keep your soil aerated, and part of it is feeding, and you got to feed your soil life. And so then the other thing is that the number one yield limiting factor on crops is carbon dioxide. It's not nitrogen. It's not some chemistry. It's carbon dioxide. Everybody says, oh, but our carbon dioxide is all boiling off. Mismanagement of nitrogen and tillage. If you go out in the fall and these guys are knifing in their ammonia in the soil and they're boiling off carbon dioxide, what do you think the guys that grow? Anybody grow giant pumpkins? You figure it out, you're going to use dry ice. Carbon dioxide, greenhouses in Canada, they all inject carbon dioxide. You go into a cornfield, on a high-yielding cornfield in the middle of the summer, carbon dioxide levels are almost zero. The first guy to grow 400 bushel corn said, in order to grow 400 bushel corn, you're going to have to follow 400 bushel corn, and every time you put nitrogen on, you boil carbon dioxide off, and that's what drives your yields. It's sugars, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen. So anyway, we like to shallow incorporate and then manage our nitrogen, and our ask was to release it because the stomata on the bottom of the leaf of a plant, that's to absorb carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide's huge to make this thing work. So everybody's worried about, we can't, if we go to this crop, it's our mismanagement of carbon dioxide, mismanagement of residues and carbon. So this here is a field that I showed you that one. I was taking that Lemken, I was taking that mismatched thing down, and then we grow these cocktail mixes. The advantage about being organic, we only buy a tiller radish and clover and oats because we're tight old Germans. Our weeds make up our diversity. We get enough weeds, we're organic. You can see those weeds and things in there. So that'll be seed corn next year. We grow a lot of seed corn. We had the highest quality seed corn going into Beck's hybrid situation out of Indiana, huge seed corn company, and in the top 10% of the yield comparing conventional and organic. And so we got their attention about how we farm on our farm out here. And you can see the green on the ground because after we take the males out, we put a cover crop in. We're always trying to put something back into the soil. And the other thing is organic farmers got a huge advantage. We have to transition it from conventional to organic. And it takes 2 growing seasons. In those 2 growing seasons, we fix soils. We just transitioned 300 acres last year. So we get land from very, very wealthy people that want it farmed organically, and we don't make any money in transition, and they want their farm organic. They don't get paid rent during transition. But once it is organic, we share the profits. So they do really well. They get to make it up. We don't make any money. So we spend 2 years putting oats and clover and working it down, taking the soil test, adding all the minerals. We're going to spend $300 an acre on remineralizing the land, starting with calcium and phosphorus, and we got poultry manure and dairy manure available. This is a field by right along the Wisconsin River, just a half mile to the north of this, to the right. And that's the second year of transition. Next year, that'll be seed corn. So we did that 2 years in a row, and then we put manure on it, and we grow that cover crop and get that back up in there. And I can change the soil in 2 years. You'll not recognize what I started with. Don't tell me it takes 20 years to change soils. Now, it's not perfect. This is what it looks like in the spring when the clovers and things that come back that didn't winter kill, then we can see the wheel tracks and then we spread manure. See, if you're spreading manure on a land, see, there's a lot of things we can do to change agriculture. And that's why when I was talking with Scott with your organization, we've been talking about meetings out here. See, I say the policy I want to do in agriculture is really quite simple, and everybody's not going to like it. I want to pay the farmer for something besides corn and beans, take the subsidies away from corn and beans, subsidize that third crop. I was over at Cambridge University speaking at a think tank group on sustainability, and you know my thoughts on sustainability. Oh, how are we going to feed all these people in the world? I said, come on. First of all, they're going to shoot one another. And the second thing, And the second thing is, I said, we already, 40% of our corn goes to energy, we can double our yields, and they don't eat corn and beans. Why don't we grow that third crop? Let's say it's wheat or oats, lentils, I don't care, something that we can feed the world with, and now we completely changed agriculture. I just need one more crop, because the wheat and stuff is harvested in July. I can plant this beautiful cover crop following it, and cut my nitrogen down, my insecticides, I can improve my soil health, and now I can put my manure on it. Now the manure we spread on there sucks up into those plants. Can't leach, can't erode, can't get away. And that's biological farming. I had guys out to our farm last fall. After the first year, last spring, I had a trainee here from the Czech Republic. I got a project going on in Eastern Europe, but she was there. We couldn't find a worm on that farm. 6 months later, after doing what we did, there they are. So where were they? Were they little cocoons waiting for the day? Where were they? Why couldn't I find them before? Now they're just, because now we created an ideal home, we quit poisoning them, and we're feeding them. It's pretty simple. I tell farmers, we run a real tight rotation. Most farmers would look at that and say, wow, that's a nice hayfield. First, I tell the farmers, you got to be able to get a crop like that, and then you got to be able to sacrifice a crop like that. See, we feed our crops like you feed cows. Anybody got dairy cows anymore? We're a dying breed out here. I know that. There's not many of us left anymore, and they're going down like flies out here. I hate to see that, but that's the reality. So if you fed that kind of a feed and that kind of a stand to a dairy cow, you can get 100 pounds of milk a day. You can also put that back in the soil and grow corn. 2 years ago, we had a project with the University of Wisconsin looking at genome study on corn. We're from the old genetics some years ago. We had 588 varieties of corn on our farm. We had 6 or 8 varieties, went over 300 bushel corn. They had the same plot was at the university and on a seed corn farm, and the data never got publicized because they were wondering how in the world does an organic farm grow 300 bushel corn? Well, why wouldn't I? Its yield is mineral, sunshine, and water. I can grow a lot of things. I can manage this system. We're a high-yielding organic farm. Some of our silage corn, we try to interseed, but it's really difficult because that corn's about 12 feet tall and it got shaded out. As my son, we're mowing down that ryegrass, and we're working that ryegrass in, and we do some rye, and we drive kind of crooked. You see that windrow there? But anyway, we grow rye for seed. And I think, Brian, you were absolutely right. We're so far north, it's hard to fit cover crops into our rotation. They don't interseed very well. They might work better on a conventional farm interseeded because they can do it earlier than us organic guys, and we have to cultivate late. And then the other thing is that, you see, even this crop right here, we use it for seed on our own farm. So we have acres that we'll grow this for seed on our farm. And then following that, we'd grow soybeans. And we plant our soybeans into June. We plant them really late. That was 84 bushel beans. This is on our organic farm. You don't see many weeds in it, but see, it's intensive management. When we plant it late and we manage our weeds, see, when I got that big, tall rye crop, it's sucking up all the nutrients from the weeds. So biological farming is really doing anything it can do to get your soils healthy and mineralized. Just like this here's a vegetable farm. We actually have Taliesin, the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation, we farm that farm. We have 35 acres of vegetables on that farm, and we got the visitor center now serves all food from the farm, and they got it's a chef training program at the school, and we're going to start agritourism. We want to get the universities and researchers involved to study the whole 900-acre estate, and there's about 300 acres of cropland. I've been farming it since 2000. I've been on the board for 10 years now, and it's been a slow move to get things changed. I tell people, I'm getting old, you better speed up. You can't drag this out forever. This year in Virginia, $1 million CSA. In Virginia, where you say, oh, all that warm climate, you're going to have disease and insects. No. 1 year of soil building and 1 year of production. If you're going to grow a high return crop like that, it's 1 year of soil building and 1 year of production. And this farm does $1 million CSA on 50 acres. So NRCS, I think, Brian, you brought that up, are a minimum disturbance, maximum soil cover, maximum biodiversity, and the presence of living roots. Nobody can argue against that. The question is, how do I achieve that? And that's why I see, it doesn't say no-till, and it doesn't say how do I get my ground covered, and how do I get this biodiversity out here, and then, of course, my living roots. And the other thing is, this is soil health I expanded upon the NRCS model just a little bit. And see, health is really the capacity to function. And I added the word without intervention. I'm in my mid-70s, and you could say, am I healthy or am I not healthy? I don't take any kind of medication, not that I don't need any, because I don't go to the doctor to find out if I do or not, see if I don't know. My wife said it's irresponsible. It probably is irresponsible, but I feel good, and why would I go there? I'd have something to worry about. Now I don't worry about it. That's being a man compared to a woman, I think, partially. My wife doesn't agree with my little plan. But you were right. Water has got to soak in the ground. And that water soaking in the ground means I got to stop all barriers. I think you talked about the vertical instead of horizontal erosion. I went to Iowa Ames last night. I saw brown snow in a lot of places. Well, that's that little fine silty stuff. When it percolates through your ground, it creates those little hard pans, and that stops water. So we'll run our deep rivers as we have to. And nutrient recycling isn't about sucking it back up out of my groundwater. That's about through plants and biology. I can't, all that disturbance, I can't have a crust on top of the ground. That's why we like to shallow incorporate. I got to have a lot of diversity. I got to have living roots. And I got to manage the K residues. And I wrote the word minerals up there. You know what's wrong with this whole system? See, if you're a conservation person, you can go to anybody and say, man, growing a cover crop or minimum till or no till, oh, wonderful, wonderful. If you said, look, I think we got these minerals all mixed up. Every soil science department in North America, every fertilizer company you just attacked. I have beers with the guys that run for soil conservation that started this whole little program about soil health, and they can't. We need minerals. We need minerals. What minerals do we need? Not more N, P, and K soluble salt fertilizers. We need calcium. We need trace minerals. We need other things to keep this healthy. And I tell people out here, we do a soil test to measure minerals. You don't need a soil test to measure health. Look at it. You can tell that soil. You can tell that soil's in pretty darn good shape. Just look at it. On your left over there, that was Frank Goyrich. That was Taliesin. When we took over, 2 years later, that's what the soil looks like. In 2 years, we went from that, crust on the ground, stalks not rotting down, velvet leaf growing. In 2 years, that's what it looked like after our 2-year soil building. Same field, same soil, and that's what you can do. It's amazing how fast soil changes. It's the crust on the earth is the 6 inches between people's ears. It's not the soil. So soil health is really that capacity to function. It's organic matter. And soil fertility is that exchange of nutrients. And that exchange of nutrients has to come through carbon and biology. So the regenerative ag movement, which I got a little pushback, we're having a little pushback here, it's about no-till. And they hide the fact that you can't go no-till without chemicals. And you can't get rid of your residues without cattle. I'm in southern Ohio, and we're having this discussion. That's where the fight came, because I had a real good friend of mine lived up by Duluth, and he moved down to Ohio. He said the most miserable move in his life. See, you go to North Dakota where Gabe Brown is, it freezes in November and it thaws in April. And it gets 20 inches of rain a year. We got 50 inches last year. They get 60 inches in some place in Ohio, and it's mud every month of the year. You can't turn your cattle out to destroy your fields. They sink in 6, 8 inches deep. They destroy them. You can't turn cattle in that land. Now, I say, why do we need cattle? We all got soil livestock. I can use iron and shallow incorporate my residues. And cover crops, we all agree with, but how do you manage them? You get to that whole group out here with Gabe Brown and Ray Archuleta and Alan Williams. Alan Williams said, well, you have to have the cattle to do your tillage. See, the prairies were tilled, folks, by the wolves, because the wolves herded the bison, and the bison peed and pooped and stomped, and they tilled the ground. And that's what they want to do with their cattle. Just when it's a little bit of mud on top. You don't want to do it 6 inches deep. Shallow incorporating your residue. They did it with cattle. That's how the prairies got tilled. And, of course, livestock, we're not going to fence this Midwest. If you want to have a livestock farm, go to Nebraska. The law is you have to fence your neighbor's cattle out. There's no fences there. I'm not going to fence southern Minnesota. We're not going to fence Illinois, Iowa, and Indiana. Where's that going to go? That's not going to go very far. That's not going to change agriculture. I'm sorry, and that's where my pushback comes. And compost is wonderful, but it's not a complete program, and I want more soil tests than that. So these cover crops, this is a farm out in Alamosa, Colorado, used to grow potatoes every 4 years. Now it's every other year. 1 year soil building, 1 year potatoes. No insecticides, no herbicides, no fungicides, and 20 units of nitrogen. His neighbors use 200. That's this cocktail mix. Now, they have to mow it. Now, if you ever know anything about potatoes, they're not a no-till farming system. They're mowing it, then they're going to work them in, then they're going to put on compost, they're going to make sure it's clean, because you plant your potatoes, and you're going to plant your potatoes, and you're going to hill them, then you're going to cultivate them again, and you're going to dig them. Now, if you go to his farm, and by Alamosa, they only get 5 inches of rain. It's sand. There are a lot of sand dunes out there they run their four-wheelers on. They have straw bales sitting on the end of their fields to fill in the trenches because the irrigation rigs sink. His rig runs right on top of the ground. His soil structure has changed that much with all that tillage. He said, don't tell me tillage destroys the soil. Tell me my nitrogen and my chemicals and things I used to do destroyed my soil. Now that I've been tilling and growing all these cover crops, my soil is just fine. There's more to it. See, we got a lot of things on. But anyway, cover crops should be your nitrogen, should be your nutrient storing, should be your time release depending on the digestibility. It should be your erosion protection, and it should be a carbon sequestering on your soils. And it should be your insect control, it should be your disease prevention, it should be your resilience in your soil, and it should be your water holding capacity. And if you ask a farmer about cover crops, they say, oh, you just added another cost to my farm. They didn't know how to take advantage. And that's what we got to demonstrate. How do you take advantage of all these things? I should be able to get rid of my insecticides, my fungicides, my pesticides, my biotechnology, and cut my nitrogen in half. And we'll all be better off on this planet. But I got to include those in my rotation. This is what was in that mustard that was grown on that farm. See, it's a biofuming. If you look at the nitrogen to sulfur ratio, I did my graduate, it was 3-to-1. We normally look at 10-to-1 to build proteins. That's why it stinks when it rots, just like tiller radish. And so all those minerals that are in that yellow plant, and the reason we did the testing is yellow plants, of course, the biodynamic people think that's because the yellow flower is higher in calcium. And it is high in calcium. There's a lot of nutrients and fairly high digestible. That's a feed test just on the mustard alone. So those nutrients can't leach, candy road can't get away. That's just potatoes. No herbicides, no insecticides, no fungicides. Just like mob grazing, you read the reports on this if you're in my world, mob grazing did not increase soil organic matter. Just like when I was a kid, we put night fertilizer on corn, grew 12 feet tall. We thought, man, we're really going to build organic matter. 40 years later, we cut it in half. Then he said, oh, it's all your tillage. University of Wisconsin finished a study 2 years ago. 20 years of no-till did not increase the organic matter. Not one speck. What's the trouble? Nitrogen. Balancing carbon to nitrogen ratios. Nitrogen is burning up our carbon. It's not everything else. So anyway, composting is what it is, and I don't mind putting nutrients in it. The health study is really about doing, I'm not so keen on this thing. It's about measuring water-soluble nutrients and all that, because you see, this is that big Gunsmoke farm at Pierce, South Dakota, General Mills project. I'm in the middle. I'm the agronomist on this farm. 34,000 acres. That's Wisconsin, guys. 50 miles just to go look at it all. General Mills is going to put 4,000 acres of butterfly and bee habitat. See, they want to label, this is their model farm. This is just one of them. They need about 100,000 acres of hard red spring wheat out here. So they did a soil health study, and that ground is as hard and dead as the floor you're on. The soil health study said perfect, because they took that old dead, dry drought soil, they put it in the lab, and they added water, and the biology started to flourish. Well, that's not really measuring what was going on in the field. That was measuring after you watered it. They couldn't get the weeds controlled. It's kochia, it's thistle, and it's cheatgrass. 34,000 acres of it. It's going one more year before it's organic. I said, now don't laugh at us. Just give us time. We got financial people running the checkbook. So I was trained by Ulbrich, and that's about soil balance. And I was trained if you get your minerals right. This is a farm by Monticello, Iowa. He has never done a cover crop. Look at that soil. Earthworm castings are the little things around it up by the roots you can see up there, and that beautiful chocolate cake. That's all about changing minerals. And they went to strip-till farming. There's no cover crop that's ever been grown on this farm. And look at those beautiful soils. So minerals, that's what I was taught. You know, minerals make a huge difference out here. There's another farm that's in Jackson, Minnesota. And I've been with him for about 30 years. And look at this beautiful soil. Never had a cover crop on it. That's just mineral changing. So anything I think we know, I say out here, we got it all figured out. We understand minerals. We know there's 20 plus minerals known to grow the crop. And we know there's different sources of those minerals. We know plant calcium is essential for us to grow. We know there's ratios between those minerals, and we know there's sufficiency levels of those minerals. And we also know there's different sources of those minerals. And we know as an organic farmer, I can use any minerals anybody else can. And we know minerals belong in that carbon, or fertilizer belongs in minerals in a carbon biological cycle. I shouldn't be dumping them on the ground and hope a plant gets them and then worry about when they run in my water. They should be locked to something out here, whether it's a plant or we do all carbon-based fertilizers. And so soil correction, you're adding what's missing, and organic is about prevention. I won't go through this, but I divided soils down into 3 categories. What kind of soil is it? Where are your P's and K's? Where's your calcium, magnesium? What about your traces, and how is the uniformity of it? So we use Omaha Midwest labs, and we do a complete elaborate soil test. Perfect soil test, rarely go perfect crops. You see that below those brace roots, that top 3 or 4 inches? You can do anything you want up there, but don't you dare tear up middle zone. A chisel plow and a moldboard plow both do the same damage, and they always compare no-till to plowing. See those little breathing channels? The strip-till guys came up with this. They placed it, and once you get that roots going in your soil, you got breathing channels, and you got channels for the next root to follow, and you got all your earthworm channels there. It's not the damage you don't do up on top. Now, we run big rippers. We want to make sure we don't have any compaction. But a soil test doesn't tell you if the plants are available. It doesn't tell you the biology, and it doesn't tell you the physical properties. So calcium is our king out here, and this is a study down at Purdue University about adding calcium and sulfur in the morning, and by nighttime, the water running off those little plots was crystal clear. It quit getting dirty. It's the only chemistry you can add to a soil. You didn't change biology in 12 hours. You changed chemistry, the physical properties. So better soil structure, better water holding capacity, water penetration, and better tilth. Here's where you dump the pile of calcium, and the insects are eating the rest of the field. So calcium protects your plants. Just like gives us a solid stemmed alfalfa. University of Minnesota has been testing what's in those plants as pectins. And just like when I started this fertilizer business, there was N, P, and K. And I wanted to add more stuff, and that's why we choose a whole bunch of different sources and different calcium sources. I'm watching the clock over. I'm pretty good at it. It's hard for me to do a half-hour meeting when I do full-day meetings. I got to realize I'm trying to paint my picture. This one here you got to be well aware of, because this is what I'm 75 years old, and I had 3 partners. One died, the other 2 retired. And I built a $35 million company. Now what? I brought on financial partners, and we got something that's going to revolutionize agriculture as you know it today. And one of your farms in Minnesota has been involved with this. This is Fair Oaks, Indiana, that large farm south of Chicago. They've been to Fair Oaks. They milk 16,000 cows. They'll never spread another pound of manure. It's over. We got a $16 million fertilizer facility sitting on their farm. The feed comes off, runs through a cow for 24, 48 hours, goes in the anaerobic digester, comes out of the digester. We take the water and the fiber out, and then we separate out and precipitate the minerals out. We get 95% of the phosphorus. We don't get all the nitrogen and potash, and then we add other minerals to it. We pelletize fertilizers. We want to add it 1 year. And we've had a lot of troubles. Nobody's ever done this before. And the next 10 are already financed as soon as we got this one up and working. And we've had a lot of success because now we've added, it's a biological thing you add with it. And it's really dead bodies of bugs that we got in here. And it's really about biologicals, and it's about humates, and it's about plant growth regulators and enzymes and plant protective compounds, all coming out of those bodies of bugs. Food for biology, and there's extra minerals involved in the thing. And then, of course, we manufacture fertilizers out of it. This is a test plot on trace mills at the University of Wisconsin. See in the background, that corner is kind of green. On your left, it's kind of brown. Now it's a little greener. That's where we put on trace mills. It's nothing but trace mills. The one on the right says trace mills. So if we're going to get rid of insecticides, nobody wants to buy trace mills. They're expensive. NPK, well, you can't keep growing 200 bushel corn because they get removed from your farm, and they're the ones that give you the plant health. You can't ignore the trace mills. They don't want to pay the money, but they got to shuffle their dollars, is what that's about. This is up in Chatham, Ontario. That's Gerber's baby food squash. This one's conventional, and this one's organic. Foliar fed with milk and compost tea. That's conventional. Fungicides every 5 days, and this one's organic. Don't tell me we can't grow healthy crops. That's 1,700-acre organic farm, vegetable farm in Canada. This is wheat. You can see the difference in the diseases. We cut down on wheat. And we like to add molasses or sugars, and we're real big believers in that little colostrum mix. We put biology, we put fish meal, we put kelp, we put all kinds of things right down next to the seed when we plant it. I don't need other seed protection. And so we can get some pretty healthy-looking crops. So biology. You can see it, you can smell it. It's got to do with soil health and soil fertility. And it's not only lives in soil, but how many. Soil life wants its food on top, and it wants to be left alone. Plants determine the soil life. That's why you have the diversity of plants. In soil life, it's different plants at different maturities, and cows are similar. Calcium is king. So I've talked about all these things already. That's Dr. Elaine Ingham. She was the one that brought on a lot of soil biology for a lot of people, and she taught me something. Everybody says, oh, your soil is too fungal dominated. What you feed is what you get. And so how I get my high-yielding corn crop, the bacteria got a real close nitrogen to phosphorus ratio. And so the fungus got a much lower one. So if I feed them complex carbons, I don't get enough nitrogen. I can grow my nitrogen, but I got to feed bacteria food. I got to have bacteria food in this whole system. So I divided it out. I spent my career trying to get things simple. Green carbon's green succulent stuff. Brown carbon's old mature things. And black carbon is the humus. And I think, Brian, you might have talked about it now. The liquids that come down, Christine Jones out of Australia, our organic matter in our soil is not built from putting residues in the ground. It's built by the liquid exudates from the plant, feeding the bacteria and the bio. They had the curve upside down for the last 40 years. It'll take 2 generations to change the education model so it's not the same as it used to be, and it was wrong all those years. Penn State University, the one on the left was hairy vetch with a lot of nitrogen credits. The one on the right was young succulent green crop. And they said, we don't understand it. That one's yellow and this other one's green. And I said, well, one wasn't digestible. It'd be like making your hay the 4th of July and try to get milk out of it. So we throw the word digestibility in there. If you want to take this crop right here, you see this, if you went out and took a soil sample, you wouldn't measure this. That had 200 units of nitrogen credit. We entered the growing season with over 300 units and on an organic farm. Now our nutrients, these wouldn't be on a soil test. They're in a time-release fertilizer. You see why this system, you got to figure out how to get this thing to pay for people. Where we grew this tall rye, that's where we're going to grow soybeans. Here's where we're going to grow corn. I want the soybeans to be starved of nutrients. This is out in Colorado, Idaho. This farm here is on Snowville. The ground is white from salt, and it can hardly grow crops. So the first guy to fertilize a cover crop mix, and we had radish and tiller things in there. All these nutrients get put through the compost pile. You can't add fertilizer to a 9 pH soil with a 14% sodium and expect to get a crop. He doubled his potato yield. He's now a 600 sack potato crop. He just never got over 300 sack potato crop before. The nutrients are bypassing the soil. You see, they're either coming through the cover crop or they're coming through the compost. You're not adding a mineral to the soil and hope the plant gets it out here. So my last section's on tillage. To till or not to till, that's the question out here. And I say you can have healthy soils with tillage? Absolutely. If you haven't been around long enough, go to a lot of Amish guys. The only thing they can do is team a horse and plow. They don't plow 12 inches deep, and they don't plow 10 miles an hour. And boy, they got some pretty healthy soils. They don't plow every year either. And they got dairy manure, and they got things in rotation. There's a lot of guys with tillage that got pretty healthy soils. Nutrients sitting on top of the ground is like putting feed on the other side for cattle. That's my argument about no-till. Now, a lot of guys have said, the bugs in the soil can't jump up and get it. That's why I got to have some on top. That's why I like to lightly work them in the ground. And I got to look at what I'm working in the ground. And if you're going to go after an aggressive tillage like plowing or chiseling, you better have a really good reason. Like I got all this extra manure, need to put on lime. There's some kind of a problem with that thing. And then no-tilling, plowing are extremes. There's common sense in the middle. I like to shallow incorporate. I want to leave my residues near the surface. And we did a bunch of no-till. The stuff on the left was no-till. See, we plant down in furrows. Look at our soils. We leave a lot of residues on top. You go by our farm, and it's just residues every which way. And so we did the rolling and crimping. It's a failing farming system, folks. Lamberton Experiment Station, I spoke down there, and they stood at high-risk farming. University of Wisconsin's finally backing down. When it works, it's beautiful. But it fails as equally many times as it works, and that's where the struggle is, because whatever it does, it set back those beans. I got irrigation on this field. And there's more weeds where I rolled and crimped than where I didn't. There's 10 bushel bean difference out there. This is Arlington, University of Wisconsin. See the yellow stuff? That's rolled, crimp, rye. It suppresses the beans to a 10 bushel line. Now, I like the fact that we don't have to do tillage. We're developing minimum till, like a strip till system for organics, and that's the University of Wisconsin. Yeah, that's a 10 bushel bean hit. Now, that straw looks nice, and all that looks pretty out here, and then sometimes it looks like that, and then you buy a $60,000 weed zapper, and you zap those little guys off, and you see, I think you brought it up, Brian, you see the compaction layers. This is University of Illinois. That's a really lousy soil, and the compaction is caused by poor soil structure and vertical leaching of silt. Fine silt is making those compacted zones. Just like this is plowed soil without common sense. I like running my rippers, cutting that slot in the ground. We're about 12 inches deep so the water can soak in and we're not disturbing the soil. I'm a real big believer in strip till. This is developed by Mark Bauer at Faribault, Minnesota. He was a customer of mine for years. Now it's Environmental Technologies. It's down there by Rochester. They make these somewhere. And then you see they put all that little stuff into the strip. And now we can have a concentrate of nutrients so we can fix rented land and grow really good crops. That's how I think we ought to be farming. If I was conventional, I'd be farming that way. And I'm trying to develop that for organic farming. And we plant in these furrows out here. And so, anyway, my last ones here. The same thinking that brought us this far has created problems that the same thinking can't solve. And I think we have a system of farming called biological farming. If everybody got involved with it, will radically change agriculture because we wouldn't need all the nutrients. So my method is this. I told Scott, we were having a conference call about this, I want to subsidize that third crop. It could be a cover crop. You do nothing but a cover crop the year. Quit subsidizing corn and beans and tax nitrogen, because it is the problem, so high that they have to carefully use it or not use it at all. And that's all you have to do to change. That's the only policy I want. And watch agriculture change. It'd be radical. Tax the cigarettes to clean up lungs. Let's tax nitrogen to clean up our carbon. That's Taliesin, the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. We farm that farm. You got to have some knowledge. You got to move the negatives. You got to have calcium, sulfur, and boron, balanced fertilizers, and carbon and biology. So, I know I covered a lot of stuff, but I always got too many slides. I tried to paint the picture of what this is all about. And I hope I got some of my message across to some of you. So, thank you. Whew. I can speak at 1,000 words a minute with gusts up to 1,500. That's what someone said.